At the edge of the Stormrune Pack's territory, Darius Stormrune stands, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. A fierce and powerful alpha, he is used to commanding respect, but there is one thing he cannot control, the woman who has invaded his heart. Lirael Moonstone, the very woman he is forbidden to love. Their bond, undeniable yet dangerous, pulls him in every direction at once. His loyalty to his pack, his duty as leader, and the intense attraction he feels for her all collide, and the stakes could not be higher. With the weight of his pack's future on his shoulders, Darius faces an impossible choice. Can he protect the woman he loves, or will his duty tear them apart forever? Lirael Moonstone had always known what was expected of her. As the daughter of the Moonstone clan, the future leader of her pack, her path was clear until Darius walked into her life. At first, it was just a whisper of connection, a flicker of something too strong to ignore. But the pack's rules are unyielding. The bond between alpha and mate is forbidden, their love a dangerous thing to desire. Lirael's heart, however, does not follow the rules. Torn between her loyalty to her pack and the undeniable bond with Darius, she faces a devastating truth. Choosing him could mean the loss of everything she has worked for. But as the emotional pull between them deepens, will she choose love, even at the cost of her identity as future alpha? Lirael stood at the edge of the Moonstone Pack's clearing, her golden hair swept by the cool evening breeze. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, but it was the ache in her chest that consumed her attention. It had been days since her last encounter with Darius, the alpha of the Stormrune Pack, and each passing moment felt like an eternity. His face haunted her dreams, his presence in her thoughts, a constant, undeniable pull. She clenched her fists, trying to push the thoughts away, but it was no use. Her heart was not her own. Every time she allowed herself to look at Darius, truly look, something deep inside her cracked open, a longing she couldn't suppress, no matter how hard she tried. Her role as the future alpha of the Moonstone Pack had always been clear. Her father had trained her, taught her to be strong, independent, and steadfast in her duties. She was destined to lead, but being around Darius made that destiny feel like a far-off dream, something that could never come to pass if she continued to give in to the feelings swirling inside her. Lirael was torn. Her duty to her pack, to her father's legacy, was what had shaped her. She had worked her entire life to be the leader they needed, the leader who would carry their traditions and protect them from the dangers that lurked beyond their borders. Yet, when she thought of Darius, her heart raced in a way that made her feel as though the very foundation of her identity was slipping away. He was everything she was not meant to want, a rival alpha from a rival pack, forbidden. Their bond could never exist in the light, could never be accepted by either of their packs. The tension between them had been palpable from the moment they met, their gazes colliding in a way that left her breathless. She had seen the conflict in his eyes too, the desire, the restraint. He was a leader, a protector, someone who commanded loyalty and strength. Yet when he looked at her, his usual confidence seemed to falter. He, too, was bound by the pack's unyielding rules. The very nature of their connection was dangerous. It could ruin them both. Lirael sighed, her breath catching as she turned toward the path leading to the pack's central dwelling. Every step she took felt heavier, as though the weight of her future was pressing down on her shoulders. It was a weight she had carried for years, but today it felt more suffocating than ever. She couldn't ignore it anymore, the tension, the draw between her and Darius, the pull that felt more like a magnet than a choice. The path ahead seemed uncertain, blurred by emotions she couldn't control. She had tried to resist, tried to focus on her responsibilities. She had even turned away from Darius when he came to speak to her, pushing him out of her mind and heart. But that hadn't worked. It had only made the longing inside her grow more intense, more desperate. Her heart knew what she wanted, but her mind, her duty, they told her something else. She had to be strong, independent, just as her father had taught her. Yet, in this moment, the future that awaited her, the role she was supposed to play, felt small compared to the overwhelming desire that burned inside her whenever she thought of Darius. She couldn't be the leader she was meant to be if she couldn't control this, if she couldn't push him away and move forward. But no matter how hard she tried, there was no escaping it. Darius had come into her life, into her heart, and now he was all she could think about. The forest was quiet, the only sounds the whisper of the wind through the trees and the occasional rustle of leaves beneath their feet. Lirael's breath quickened as she stepped deeper into the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't meant to come here, not really, but when she felt the pull of the pack boundaries, when she felt the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her, it had drawn her here, to the one place she couldn't escape. And there he was. Standing in the middle of the clearing, Darius Stormrune, his golden eyes reflecting the fading light of the setting sun. He didn't speak immediately, but she could feel his gaze on her, heavy and all-encompassing. It was as if he was waiting for her to say something to break the silence, but Lirael couldn't find her voice. The pull between them was suffocating. Every instinct told her to turn and run, to retreat into the safety of her pack, but her feet were frozen, rooted to the ground. Darius took a step forward, his movements as fluid and graceful as a predator. His rugged features softened when his eyes met hers, a flicker of something tender in their depths, a tenderness that she knew had no place in their world. He was an alpha, bound by duty as she was. They couldn't afford to indulge in this feeling, this connection that was tearing them apart. "You shouldn't be here, Lirael." His voice was low, gravelly, like the sound of distant thunder. He was so close now, only a few steps away, and her breath caught in her throat. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She knew the risks. She had always known them. Their bond was forbidden, their connection dangerous. But knowing that didn't make it any easier to ignore. It didn't make the heat between them any less powerful. Darius's gaze softened even more, his hand twitching at his side, as though he were battling the urge to reach for her. Lirael could feel the desire between them like an electric charge in the air. It hummed in the space between their bodies, a magnetism neither of them could escape, no matter how hard they tried. "Lirael," Darius said, his voice strained. "You're everything I can't have, everything I'm not supposed to want." Her heart twisted at the pain in his voice. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance between them and taste the forbidden love she knew they both shared. But she couldn't. She couldn't risk it. Not now, not when so much was at stake. "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But we can't fight this, can we? We can't fight this feeling, no matter how hard we try." Darius let out a sharp breath, his eyes flashing with something fierce, something wild. His wolf was stirring within him just beneath the surface, barely contained. The alpha, the protector, the leader was still there, but so was the man who wanted her, needed her, in ways that he could never explain. He clenched his jaw, looking away for a moment as though trying to regain control. "We shouldn't even be speaking," he said through gritted teeth. This is madness, if anyone finds out." "I know," Lirael interrupted, shaking her head. "The consequences. I understand, Darius, but it doesn't change what's between us. It doesn't change what I feel for you." Darius's expression faltered, as though the weight of her words had struck him harder than anything else. He reached out, his hand brushing lightly against her arm, sending a shock of warmth through her. But before either of them could say another word, he stepped back, his face hardening once more. "I can't let this happen," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I can't let you ruin everything we've both worked for. My pack, your future, all of it. We can't be together." Lirael felt the sting of his words deep within her, but she refused to show weakness. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with the strength that had always been her defining trait. "I'm not asking for everything, Darius," she said quietly, her voice full of conviction. "I'm asking for this moment, for us, just once." For a fleeting moment, Darius's eyes softened, and the space between them felt smaller, the world outside quieter. But just as quickly, the walls went up again. He turned away, taking a few steps back, his back rigid with restraint. "No, Lirael, we can't, we shouldn't." With those words, he turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Lirael standing alone in the clearing. She could still feel the weight of his presence, still taste the bitter sweetness of the forbidden bond they shared. But for the first time in her life, Lirael realized that some things were stronger than the rules. Some things could not be denied, no matter the consequences. The night air was thick with tension as the full moon rose above the horizon, casting a silvery glow over the forest. Lirael walked swiftly through the woods, her senses heightened, her heart still racing from the conversation with Darius earlier. She had never felt so torn, so conflicted. She wanted to believe that the bond between them could survive, that they could find a way to be together, but the weight of their responsibilities hung heavy on her shoulders. Just as she thought she might find solace in the solitude of the forest, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down her spine. Her instincts kicked in instantly, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The pack was under threat. She could feel it in her bones. Before she could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. It was a rogue wolf, its fur matted and eyes wild, a sign of its desperation. Lirael's heart lurched. The rogue's presence meant only one thing: danger. The packs were on the verge of a war, and this rogue could be the first sign of something much worse. Without thinking, Lirael reached for her dagger, the blade glinting coldly in the moonlight. But before she could take a step forward, a voice rang out from behind her. "Lirael, no." She turned, her breath catching in her throat as Darius stepped into view, his presence as commanding as ever. His golden eyes locked with hers, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. The air between them crackled, thick with both the danger of the rogue and the tension between their hearts. "Darius, stay back." Lirael's voice was firm, but her hands trembled. The last thing she wanted was for him to put himself at risk, but she knew the stakes. If this rogue wolf was part of a larger pack, they would need to act quickly. But Darius wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his powerful build moving with a fluid grace that made him appear even more dangerous. His eyes flicked to the rogue wolf, its snarls growing louder, and then back to Lirael. "You're not alone in this, Lirael." His voice was low, full of command and protection. "We fight together." In that moment, their bond, the one they both tried so desperately to ignore, flared to life. The air between them seemed charged, and despite the immediate danger, Lirael felt a warmth spread through her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the battle ahead and everything to do with the man standing beside her. The rogue lunged, and instinct took over. In a flash, Darius and Lirael moved as one. He tackled the rogue, using his strength to pin the animal to the ground. But the rogue wasn't done. With a vicious growl, it fought back, claws slashing at Darius's side. Lirael's heart skipped as she watched the struggle unfold before her eyes. "Darius," Lirael shouted, fear creeping into her voice as the rogue managed to land a blow to Darius's chest. Without thinking, she moved toward him, her hand outstretched as if to help, but then she stopped herself. Their bond was forbidden. She couldn't let herself get too close. But Darius's voice cut through her thoughts, raw with pain but laced with determination. "Lirael, get back." Her eyes locked with his, and for a fleeting moment everything around them disappeared. The rogue, the pack, their duty, none of it mattered. It was just her and him standing on the edge of a precipice. But reality crashed in when Darius let out a fierce snarl and threw the rogue back, using the full force of his wolf form to overpower the creature. In an instant, the rogue was down, its body crumpled on the forest floor. Darius staggered to his feet, blood dripping from the wound on his side. Lirael rushed to his side, her hands shaking as she reached for him. "You're hurt, Darius." Her voice was strained, a mixture of concern and frustration. He had just fought the rogue to protect her, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just their duty. "I'll be fine," he muttered, gritting his teeth as he steadied himself, though his voice carried a hint of exhaustion. But neither of them could ignore the truth that hung in the air between them. They had just fought together, closer than they had ever been. And in that moment, as the adrenaline slowly faded, Lirael realized something that made her heart race in a different way. Her feelings for Darius, the pull between them, could no longer be ignored. Not after this. Darius's golden eyes met hers, and for the first time he didn't look away. The bond, the desire, it was undeniable now. They had just fought side by side, and in that shared moment, everything had changed. "Lirael, we need to talk." Darius's voice was low, his expression serious. But there was something more in his eyes, something raw and honest. "We can't keep pretending this isn't happening." Lirael nodded, her heart pounding. The danger wasn't over, but in that brief exchange, a new tension had been born, one neither of them could escape. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on Darius's chest as he stood at the heart of the Stormrune Pack's gathering grounds, the moonlight casting long shadows over the stone circle where so many important decisions had been made. His golden eyes flickered with unspoken turmoil, his muscles taut from a day filled with pack matters, and his mind still caught in the moment they had shared earlier. The rogue wolf, the fight, the closeness between him and Lirael. He had never been one to doubt his decisions, but tonight the stakes were different. Tonight, the truth of what he felt for her weighed heavily in his heart, a force stronger than the pack's laws, stronger than his duty as Alpha. But the pack came first, didn't it? His father's voice echoed in his mind. The pack will always come before the individual. He had lived by that mantra his entire life. But Lirael was not just anyone. His jaw clenched as he turned, his gaze falling on the Alpha Council, a group of loyal pack members gathered around him. Each one waited for his command, the steady hum of their expectations swirling around him like a heavy fog. They trusted him. They respected him. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew what lay between him and Lirael, the forbidden bond neither of them had been able to shake. He didn't even realize he was packing, until the sound of footsteps brought him back to the present. "Darius." Lirael's voice cut through the stillness, sending a jolt through his already strained nerves. She was standing in the archway of the pack's stone hall, her blonde hair catching the moonlight, her eyes wide with uncertainty. She knew something was wrong. She had to. "We need to talk." Her words, soft but urgent, sent a shiver down his spine. She was here just as he had hoped she wouldn't be, just as he had known she would be. He stopped packing and turned toward her, the distance between them seeming miles even though they were only a few steps apart. "Lirael, I don't think we can." "Don't think we can what?" Her voice trembled, a mix of frustration and fear. Lirael wasn't just the daughter of the Moonstone Pack. She wasn't just a future leader. She was also a woman who had caught his heart in a way he hadn't planned, a woman who was too precious to lose. But he had to lose her, didn't he? "We can't keep pretending this isn't happening, Darius," she continued, her eyes flashing with defiance. "We can't keep dancing around this bond like it doesn't matter." He looked away, his heart pounding in his chest. The truth was suffocating. "You don't understand, Lirael." His voice was strained, the words like daggers in his throat. "If anyone finds out about us, about you and me, it could tear the pack apart." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had heard the arguments before, the reasons why they couldn't be together, why his duty had to come first. But tonight, it felt different. Their connection was undeniable. The bond between them had grown too strong for either of them to ignore. "I understand perfectly," Lirael whispered, her voice steady now, but the sadness in her eyes cut through him like a blade. "I understand that you will always choose them. The pack, your duty." The words hit him like a punch to the gut, the truth of them far sharper than any physical pain. He wanted to deny it, to tell her that he had always chosen her, but he couldn't. He couldn't lie to her, not now, not when the weight of his choices was already pressing down on him. "I have to choose the pack, Lirael, you know that." The words felt like chains on his heart, each one heavy with the realization that his position as Alpha, his duty to his people, came before his own desires. "I can't risk everything for one moment of weakness." Lirael flinched at the word weakness, and Darius immediately regretted saying it. She was not weak. She had never been weak, but he couldn't see another way. Tears glistened in Lirael's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She was strong. She was stronger than he gave her credit for. "Then this is it, Darius." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I can't wait for you forever. I won't be the one who holds you back from your duty." It felt like his entire world was crumbling, piece by piece. He reached out instinctively, his hand brushing against her arm, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she whispered, the words a quiet plea but filled with a heartbreaking finality. Darius watched her turn and walk away, the sound of her footsteps echoing through the clearing. Every part of him screamed to go after her, to fight for the bond they shared, but the reality of his position settled in like a cold weight. He was Alpha. He couldn't risk everything for one fleeting moment of love. And as Lirael disappeared into the shadows of the night, Darius stood there, the weight of the pack's future pressing down on him. His heart was with her, but his duty had always come first, and now, more than ever, he had to live with the consequences of that choice. The days following their argument felt like a blur of tension and unanswered questions. Lirael spent most of her time alone, wandering the borders of the Moonstone Pack's territory, as if trying to find some clarity in the forest that had once been her sanctuary. She could still feel the weight of Darius's words, the finality in his voice as he chose duty over their love. It was as though he had locked away the part of himself that had ever wanted her, and now there was only the Alpha. She had tried to focus on her duties. There was always something that needed her attention: training, overseeing pack matters, ensuring that no threats loomed on the horizon. But no matter how hard she worked, her thoughts kept returning to him. His golden eyes, his strong, steady presence. The way he had held her just a few days ago, as if they were two souls intertwined, only for him to pull away. It was impossible to forget. The more she buried it, the more the longing inside her grew. Today, as she walked toward the clearing where the pack gathered, she forced herself to focus. Today was about proving her strength to the others, to show that she was more than just the Alpha's daughter. She was a leader in her own right. The pack needed her to be strong, unwavering. And yet, in her heart, she knew the truth. Nothing she did could ever erase the emptiness she felt when Darius was out of reach. As she neared the clearing, the tension in the air grew thicker. Several elders were gathered around, their expressions grim. Her father stood in the center, his broad shoulders hunched with worry. "Lirael, come here." Her father's voice was low, his tone serious. "We have a situation." Lirael's heart skipped a beat. She nodded and approached, trying to steady her breath. "Another pack," her father continued, "has been encroaching on our territory. The Blackthorn pack. They've been testing our borders. We need to send a message." Lirael's stomach tightened. The Blackthorn pack was notorious for its ruthlessness, led by Malachi Blackthorn, a man known for his cunning and cruelty. A confrontation with them was never a simple matter. It would be a fight, and the stakes would be high. "We'll need every warrior," her father added, turning to her. "Lirael, you'll lead the charge. This is your test. Show them that the Moonstone pack is not to be underestimated." The weight of his words settled like a stone in her chest. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment, leading the pack, protecting them. But with every decision, she could feel the pull of Darius's absence. Could she truly lead them if a part of her heart was still tangled in something forbidden, something she knew she could never have? "I'll lead them," she replied, her voice steady, though the uncertainty churned in her gut. She had no choice. She had to prove herself, even if it meant putting aside everything she felt for him. As she gathered the warriors and prepared for battle, her mind was elsewhere, not on the fight ahead, but on Darius. What would he do if he were here? Would he stand with her, even now, despite the distance between them? She shoved the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. The pack depended on her. When they reached the Blackthorn pack's border, the tension in the air was palpable. The Blackthorn wolves were already gathered, their alpha standing tall in the clearing, Malachi Blackthorn, a towering figure with an air of arrogance and menace. His eyes locked onto Lirael's, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Well, well, if it isn't the Moonstone's princess," he sneered, his voice laced with mockery. "Are you here to claim your birthright, or are you just looking for trouble?" Lirael's wolf stirred beneath her skin, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the rage rising within her, but she tempered it, forcing herself to remain calm. She would not let him bait her. "We're here to protect what's ours, Malachi," Lirael said evenly, her eyes never leaving his. "Your pack has crossed the line. Leave now or we will deal with you." The air crackled with tension as the two packs sized each other up. The Blackthorn wolves were no strangers to violence, and neither were the Moonstone wolves. But Lirael knew this was more than just a territorial dispute. This was a test of her leadership and of her strength. Malachi's eyes glinted with malice. "You've grown bold, Lirael, but I wonder how long you'll stay bold when the consequences come knocking." Before she could respond, one of Malachi's warriors lunged forward, teeth bared. The fight erupted instantly, wolves on both sides shifting into their animal forms, fur bristling and claws flashing in the moonlight. Lirael's instincts kicked in as she shifted, her wolf form breaking free with a powerful roar. The battle was brutal. Wolves fought with savage precision, the sounds of snarling and growling filling the night. But amidst the chaos, Lirael's focus remained sharp. She fought with a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed, her pack rallying behind her, sensing her strength. In the midst of the battle, Lirael's eyes met Malachi's. The defiance in his gaze was undeniable, but so was the fear that she had the power to defeat him. Fear that she was no longer just the Alpha's daughter. She was a leader in her own right. As the fight raged on, Lirael's wolf took over completely, driving her forward with strength and speed. The Blackthorn pack had underestimated the Moonstones. They had underestimated her. When the battle finally came to an end, the Blackthorn wolves retreated, nursing their wounds, and Lirael stood tall, victorious. But even as the adrenaline coursed through her veins, a part of her heart still ached for Darius. She had proven herself, yes, but the cost of that victory had never been so clear. She had done it without him, and that, more than anything else, felt like the heaviest burden of all. The night was thick with tension. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting a pale glow over the clearing. Lirael stood at the edge of the Moonstone pack's territory, the weight of the battle still heavy on her shoulders. The fight with the Blackthorn pack had been a victory, but it had come at a price. The pack was still recovering, their wounds fresh, but the emotional toll was even heavier. She had proven herself as a leader, but in doing so, she had exposed the cracks in the very foundation of her future. As the pack gathered around the bonfire, their celebration of victory felt hollow. The air was thick with murmurs, the eyes of the pack members flickering nervously between Lirael and the spot where Darius stood. He had arrived just moments ago, his presence as commanding as ever. His golden eyes met hers from across the clearing, and for a fleeting moment, everything else faded away. Lirael could feel the weight of their shared gaze, the electric charge between them pulling her in, but she knew the consequences of that connection. They had always known. The bond they shared had been forbidden from the start, and now, more than ever, it felt like a burden she couldn't carry alone. "You did well today, Lirael." Darius's voice was low, cutting through the noise of the celebration. His words were not just a compliment, but a subtle acknowledgement of the bond between them, something they had never spoken of aloud, yet it hung in the air between them like an unspoken truth. Lirael's heart fluttered in her chest, but she quickly masked it with a composed smile. "Thank you, Darius." He took a step closer, his presence undeniable, but the distance between them was more than physical. The air between them was charged with something darker now. Fear, guilt, desire. Before they could exchange another word, a voice rang out, sharp and accusatory. "It's a miracle the Blackthorn pack isn't still here. You've brought them to our doorstep, Lirael." Lirael's father, the Alpha, said, his voice cold with anger. The pack's celebratory mood shifted, the tension palpable as the attention of every member turned toward the pair. Lirael stiffened, her father's words a hard slap to the face. She had fought, she had led them to victory, but in doing so, she had also exposed the cracks in the foundation of their unity. She knew it was inevitable. They had to face the consequences of their actions, but it stung nonetheless. "What do you mean by that?" Darius asked, his voice cutting through the growing tension like a blade. There was an edge to it, a protective note that Lirael had never heard before. His golden eyes burned with a fierce intensity as he stepped forward, his presence filling the space between them. Lirael's father's gaze flickered between the two of them, and it was as if the very air crackled with the realization of what had been happening. "You too," he began, his words thick with disappointment and fear. "I've known for weeks, but I refuse to believe it. You've gone behind my back, disobeyed the most sacred of rules." The realization hit Lirael like a wave. The secret she had fought so hard to keep hidden was now out in the open, and the consequences were more immediate and devastating than she could have ever imagined. She felt Darius's gaze on her, steady, unwavering, but there was no hiding the truth anymore. They were caught in the act, their forbidden bond laid bare for the entire pack to see. "We didn't," she began, but her father cut her off, his voice sharp and final. "No more lies, Lirael. I know what's been happening between you two. This is not just a betrayal of me or the rules, but of everything this pack stands for." The weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. Her chest tightened, her stomach twisting with the truth of it. Everything she had worked for, the respect she had earned, the trust of her pack, was now in jeopardy. "Darius," her father continued, his gaze turning cold and calculating, "you've always been a man of duty. I thought I could trust you, but now I see I've been wrong. You've led my daughter astray and you will answer for it." Lirael's heart sank. Her father's anger was not just directed at Darius, it was aimed at her too. She had known the risks, but hearing the words from her father, hearing the disappointment in his voice, felt like a wound she couldn't heal. Darius stepped forward, his expression hardening. "I never intended to hurt anyone," he said, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion Lirael couldn't quite place. "But I will not apologize for what I feel. I will not walk away from her." Lirael's pulse quickened as she felt the pack's eyes on them, the air thick with judgment and fear. This was the moment they had always known would come. They could not hide anymore. The forbidden love they shared was no longer just a secret. It was now a public declaration, a defiance of pack law that would have far-reaching consequences. Her father's eyes narrowed. "You'll both regret this. The pack comes first, and if you choose each other over us, you'll have to live with the consequences." The silence that followed was deafening. Lirael's heart raced, her mind reeling with the weight of her father's words. What would happen now? What would the pack think of her, of Darius? The world around them seemed to close in. Everything was at stake now, their relationship, their futures, and the pack that held their lives together. Would they give in to their bond, or would they allow the pack to tear them apart? As Lirael stood there, Darius beside her, she realized that no matter what happened next, their love could never be undone. But the question lingered, at what cost? The air was thick with tension, the remnants of the earlier confrontation still lingering like smoke in the atmosphere. Lirael stood in the heart of the clearing, surrounded by the Moonstone pack, the weight of her father's words pressing down on her like a physical force. She had never felt so conflicted, so torn between duty and love. Her heart ached for Darius, for the bond they shared, but the path they had chosen had led them here, to this moment of inevitable reckoning. The pack's gaze was unwavering, their expectations of her clear. They had trusted her, raised her to be a leader, to put the pack above all else. But now, after everything that had happened, the exposure of her relationship with Darius, the breaking of the most sacred of pack laws, her place in the pack was in jeopardy. And it wasn't just her position that was at stake. It was everything she had ever believed in. Darius stood a few paces away, his golden eyes watching her, full of pain and understanding. His presence was a silent reminder of the choice she had to make. The love they shared was undeniable, raw, and real, but it had brought them to the edge of destruction. The pack had already made it clear that their relationship could not be allowed to stand. Either she chose the pack, or she chose him. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, cold and unforgiving. The pack comes first, Lirael. If you choose him, you choose to lose everything. Lirael's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of her duty and her love suffocating her. The bond between her and Darius was not just a matter of personal desire. It had become a force that threatened to tear everything apart. And in that moment, Lirael understood something profound. Love was not just about wanting someone, about desiring them with all your heart. It was about sacrifice, about choosing the other person even when it hurt. Love, real love, required putting someone else's needs above your own, no matter the cost. And the cost for her was everything. Her eyes turned to Darius, and in that moment she saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain that mirrored her own. He had always been strong, the unshakable alpha. But now, standing before her, he looked vulnerable, lost, as though the very foundation of his identity was being questioned. She knew deep down that if they kept fighting for each other, they would destroy everything, their packs, their futures, and their love. The thought crushed her. "Darius," she whispered, her voice breaking the heavy silence, "I can't keep doing this." He looked at her, confusion and pain flashing in his golden eyes. "Lirael, what are you saying?" Her throat tightened, but she swallowed the lump that had formed there. She had to do this. She had to make this sacrifice for him, for the pack, and for herself. "We can't be together." The words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. "Not now, not like this." Darius took a step forward, his face contorted with disbelief. "You can't mean that." Lirael shook her head, tears threatening to spill over. "I do." Her voice was soft but firm. "Love isn't just about what we want. It's about what we're willing to give up. I love you, Darius, but I love the pack too, and I can't risk everything for just one moment of happiness." She felt his pain in her own chest, like a dagger twisting between them. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want to walk away from the one person who had ever made her feel alive. But she had to be strong, for both of them. Darius took another step closer, his eyes desperate. "Lirael, don't do this. You don't have to choose. We can find a way. I swear we can make it work." But Lirael knew that they couldn't. The pack's laws were not something they could simply ignore, not when so many lives depended on their obedience. The strength of the pack was built on loyalty, on sacrifice. And in this moment, she realized that the very thing that had bound them together was also the thing that would tear them apart. "I love you," she repeated, her voice trembling, "but I have to let you go." With those words she turned, her heart shattering as she walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The pack needed her. The future of the Moonstone pack depended on her. And as she disappeared into the night, leaving Darius behind, she understood the bitter truth. Love required sacrifice. And in this moment, she had chosen the pack. The consequences were painful, but she had no choice. The cost of love, she realized, was often the price of letting go. The forest was quiet, the weight of the past few weeks settling like a heavy fog over the Moonstone pack's territory. The full moon cast its silver glow across the land, painting everything in hues of blue and white. It was a peaceful night, the kind Lirael had longed for, yet it felt different now, charged with something far more profound than the usual serenity. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her blonde hair flowing in the soft breeze, her heart beating in time with the distant rhythm of the pack. Tonight felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The decision had been made, the choice between duty and love, and now everything was about to change. Behind her, the sound of footsteps reached her ears, steady and sure. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. She could feel him before he even spoke. Darius. You look like you're waiting for something." His voice was low, warm, and filled with an emotion that had been absent for so long. It was finally the right time. Lirael smiled, the tension in her chest easing as she turned to face him. The Alpha was different now. His golden eyes were no longer filled with the conflict that had once clouded them, but with something softer, something more hopeful. The walls that had once stood between them had crumbled, and now they stood together, stronger than ever. "I'm waiting for you," Lirael whispered, her voice thick with meaning. Darius smiled, his expression tender as he took a step forward, closing the distance between them. The air seemed to hum with their connection, the bond they had fought so hard to keep hidden now undeniable. His hands, strong and sure, cupped her face, his touch warm against her skin. "Lirael, I've spent so long fighting what we feel," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "But I can't fight it anymore. I choose you." Her heart swelled with emotion, the truth of his words wrapping around her like a blanket. She had never doubted him, but hearing him say it, hearing him finally choose her, made her feel as though the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. "I choose you too, Darius." Her voice was steady, but the tears in her eyes spoke of the relief she felt. "We've come so far, and now we have to face everything together, not just as two people in love, but as leaders." Darius nodded, his eyes softening as he gazed at her. "We've always known we were meant to lead together. This pack, our pack, will thrive with us at its helm. No more secrets, no more lies." And just like that, it was as if the weight of their forbidden love had disappeared, replaced by a new understanding, a commitment to each other and the pack. They had been tested, pulled apart by the world, but now they stood united, ready to lead with strength, love, and mutual respect. Lirael took Darius's hand, feeling the connection between them surge once more. Their bond was no longer a secret to be hidden or a love to be denied. It was a force, one that would drive them to make choices that would shape their future as a pair. "Let's do this together, Darius." Her voice was firm, filled with the strength that had always been inside her. This was her moment, their moment to take control of their destiny. Darius's smile was wide, genuine, as he squeezed her hand. Together. They turned toward the pack, their eyes meeting with newfound confidence. The Moonstone pack had always been strong, but under their leadership, it would become even stronger. It wasn't just about ruling. It was about growing together, facing the challenges ahead, and building a future where both love and duty could exist in harmony. The transformation was complete. The bond they shared, once forbidden, now accepted, had been tested, but it had withstood every trial. And now, as leaders, as equals, they would face the future together, knowing that their love was no longer a burden but the foundation on which they would build their reign. As they stepped forward, side by side, Lirael felt the weight of her role settle into place. She was no longer just the daughter of the Moonstone pack. She was its future, its alpha, alongside Darius. And together they would lead, not just with strength and wisdom, but with the unbreakable bond they had forged. And in that moment, under the light of the full moon, they knew that everything was finally right. The pack was theirs to guide, and the future was theirs to shape.